Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm Hosana Maqbool with you at PTV World. In today's show, we're going to be taking a look at two important stories. The first is with reference to what is going on with the economy of the country and, of course, the shape in which it is evolving when we talk about talks with the IMF in particular. This is, of course, something that has been something that everybody has been following very closely, in which the finance minister, of course, keeps on giving us positive notes about. However, what is seen on the ground and observed by many is the fact that we still don't have the board's commitment and go ahead with reference to the extended fund facility for which the staff level agreement, of course, has already been achieved in July. But it seems that there is some sort of delay with regards to the letter of intent that has also to be signed to put that up at the agenda of the board, which is coming up at the end of August. However, Pakistan is not on the list. And then, of course, when the finance minister has also been approached by different news and media outlets, they have reported that he has said that there is a positive direction underway for the board's approval in September, which probably means that this time around this is not going to be discussed. But whether or not that is true and that is going to be the way that we're going to be moving forward is, of course, something that remains to be seen, and how exactly we'll be moving forward on this front. So we're going to be taking a look at what this means, particularly also in terms of the IMF's conditions with regards to the assurances coming in from Pakistan's developmental and bilateral partners, which was clearly also said at the staff level agreement. And so whether or not that aspect is something that is coming in the way as well is going to be under discussion. And then, of course, the all-out efforts being made with reference to improving the economy of the country and how they're contributing to this discussion. We're going to be taking a look at this in our first segment of the show today. Our next one is going to be taking a look at what is happening, of course, in the UK. In the aftermath of the Southport murders, we of course saw that there have been riots in the UK, which then reportedly were being talked about. Has been said that it was centered around a social media post and fake news that emanated from a website from Pakistan. And then, of course, with regards to how a probe went underway with regards to these claims, we now have an arrest from Lahore with the involvement of a website called Channel 3 Now, and Mr. Farhan Asif as being the primary suspect behind this particular fake news. However, there are multiple ways in which people are looking at this developing story, particularly in terms of the origin of where it actually emanated from, whether it was Pakistan or the UK, and whether or not there has been significant evidence established that the claim that Mr. Farhan Asif's post is actually the one that incited all of this violence, and whether it or not it was the entire website or other elements involved in the UK as well that were part of it. So, of course, this investigation is currently underway, but what Pakistan, of course, needs to be doing at this front and what it is going to be doing in terms of handling both fake news and this particular incident is what we're going to be taking a look at in our second segment of the show today. For this and more, as always, in the studios, I've been joined by senior analyst Farrukh Pitafi and Raja Faisal, and we've also been joined online by our economists, Ms. Komal, Kenneth, Shakeel, and Mr. Shehryar Khan. Thank you very much, gentlemen and ma'am, for joining us and being a part of the discussion. I'm going to start with you, Shehryar Sab, with reference to what we have seen today, and of course in terms of the way that the developments continue, particularly with reference to the IMF. We, of course, were hoping to have the boards go ahead as well about 2 to 4 weeks from the staff level agreement, but that hasn't happened. And it seems that the upcoming board also does not include Pakistan on the list of agendas. Why do you think this may be so, and what is the reason for the delay with regards to this being put up, at least in front of the board?
Thank you very much for having me on this show. It is indeed a pleasure to discuss this IMF program, which is, of course, eminent for the government to have this facility of 7 billion, which has already been agreed. Now, specific details of boards as to why it's not forthcoming is very difficult to say. Rather, perhaps they are looking at some of the progress which have already been discussed with the finance ministers and with the macroeconomic stability indicators. Perhaps they want to look at that. But it will surely come because in principle they have agreed to grant this facility to Pakistan. But what is more important is to look at the implication of the existing IMF program on the country. So I think that would be That would be something would be better if we discuss that, because something which is yet to happen, I think we should not focus too much on that.
Right, absolutely. Ms. Komal, I want your perspective on this as well, because it seems that a lot of people are looking at this from a skeptical point of view as well, saying that this might be something related to assurances or steps that Pakistan has had to take with reference to what the IMF has said, particularly when we talk about our bilateral arrangements. And because that may not have been achieved, that is the reason for this delay. Others, of course, have concerns with regards to the trust deficit that has long existed with the IMF, despite us completing the SBA previously as well and securing the SLA. So, what is your take on the matter?
So I agree with Shehryar Sab actually that this because already Pakistan is very sensitive to bad news. Investor confidence, we see that just goes down the drain. The stock market reacts very abruptly, and right now we don't need to be focusing on these things because it creates a certain panic situation, panic environment, and it's not. We can't afford to be doing that because then it creates this whole exchange rate fluctuations as well, and then it has a multiplier effect on our import cover, our general our debt payments, repayments. So we need to be focusing on the reforms, and I don't think it's a big deal to not be on the schedule for the board meeting because eventually, as long as you fill in the financing gaps, these are the requirements regardless of whether you're on the agenda or not. Because for a successful implementation of the program, for stabilization of the economy, we need to keep the eyes on the goal. We can't be distracted by.
We understand that Komal Sahaba and Shehryar Sahab that this is a serious concern and we should be thinking positively. We are not averse to the idea, but whatever we are discussing is within the public domain. It has been reported by all the papers. So the purpose was A, to understand the underlying causes that might have actually resulted in this, and B, what is the corrective measure. Without that, of course, we can't have the kind of discussion that is needed to understand how we improve the situation.
Absolutely.
Is it not correct?
Absolutely. And we, of course, have been hearing it from the finance ministry as well. And of course, with regards to where the economy is also heading and efforts made towards making it better, there is, of course, the hope that we secure the extended fund facility as soon as possible. And so, of course, the concern that it's not up at the board this time around is concerning. Is it not?
Of course, so let's focus on the financing gap. We've heard about the rollovers, the debt rollovers from Saudi, from UAE and China. So that's a good thing. But nonetheless, some structural issues remain. Yes, these things are of concern because they have this, kind of snowballing effect on everything else in the economy. But let's not forget about all the very, very important discussions that we had around the budget. And they're those reform areas remain the same. The priorities remain the same. And just to be successful in this program, we need to still be focusing on monetary tightening. We still need to be talking about fiscal consolidation. We still need to be talking about reducing the burden that SOEs present. So the structural problems remain the same. To stay consistent, I would reiterate the point that yes, this is concerning, but so is news like Moody or Fitch has upgraded or downgraded our rankings, and that does have an impact, and we are not minimizing that, but nonetheless, it still has to be the focus still has to be the structural reforms. Right now we cannot afford as a nation to have these kind of discussions where we get sidetracked onto these side quests or whatever. So we have to be focusing on those 4 reform areas that we have been discussing since.
Right, but please help me understand a bit further when you say side quests, because it seems that this has been very fundamental to where Pakistan is headed with regards to its economy, and we've been trying to gain the extended fund facility for quite some time now, and repeatedly it has been coming in from the finance ministry, from economists, from the government, that this is absolutely essential for Pakistan to secure.
Should I respond to that, or just do you want
Yes,
to?
yes, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Sure. So I still think that, so it's not about, this is not a side quest because this is unimportant. But the thing is, IMF, even if IMF is doing this because we are not being able to meet the requirements, or if there is some kind of larger political game at play in the global economy, regardless, on paper, those structural reforms, those policy benchmarks still stand. The SLA is there. It needs to be honored. So I don't understand why would that, why would we want to blow this news out of proportion? So my point would still be, we need to be focusing on the reforms. We need to be following the program. Right now, we are in the stabilization mode. We cannot move into the growth mode unless, we are out of this stabilization phase.
Nobody.
Sana, with your permission,
Yeah, nobody is, by the way,
yeah.
nobody is blowing it out of proportion.
Absolutely.
It
Well,
was a
it's-
reported
it's-
fact.
it's
That's
something
why
that we're
discussed.
discussing.
But
Go ahead,
over to you,
Faisal.
Faisal.
And as Komal has rightly pointed out, that of course our economy is in the phase of stabilization. Of course, it is stabilizing itself. And wanted to go towards Shehryar Saab with this question: that how important is this fact that if Pakistan is heading towards seeking another IMF program, how important is this fact that new program would further strengthen the stabilization of Pakistan's economy, sir?
And by the way, could you also speak to the possibility of reported imminent reform package that the government is also going to introduce in coming days? Because you want to actually be prospective rather than retrospective. So let us focus on something that might be promising.
First of all, we need to discuss what has been done so far uh, on this program. It seems we are more inquisitive about what is more imminent rather than looking at the structural reforms, for example, rationalization of government spending. That's an important area. Secondly, there is a conditionality of IMF to leave everything to the market forces. Now, many people, they do not discuss how the markets really operate generally in the world and specifically in Pakistan. There's another important area which the IMF have particularly been really concerned about is to raise taxes, right? To increase the tax base. But if you look at the reality as of now, and if you look at the reports, some of the ADB reports and in the newspapers, most of these stabilization factors should affect positively on the economy of Pakistan, but it is not, because there is a lot of flight from Pakistan to countries where the businesses are more growing, for example, in the Gulf states. Now, if you look at the young population, more than 700,000 young entrepreneurs, for example, they have left the country. There is most of the industries are being shut down, and a lot of people are being laid, because of higher tariff costs. And if you look at the electricity costs, they are extremely exorbitant for the people who are struggling to meet both ends. So these type of discussions are rather more important in terms of looking at what the existing reforms are actually achieving and how Pakistan is moving towards stabilization, which we have seen in the past many years. On all the IMF programs, what I failed to understand is is every government, successive governments, they talk about the IMF programs, but they do not discuss it with intelligentsia, for example. They do not discuss it with the members in the provinces, for example. So there is a provincial disharmony right now, and the provinces are struggling for resources. So even if we move forward on this state stabilization program, have we really looked at the 18th Amendment of the provincial resources? How are they going to meet their own resources, given the fact that we have high taxation on the people who are working right now? So these are some of the areas that I would like to point out. So having more and more funds seems very good in terms of having more um, bailout packages. But are we moving towards the right kind of structural reforms which we have signed with IMF or not? So that's really the point and discussion
Yeah,
right now.
and that was exactly, Shehryar sir. This is in light of what you have actually enlightened us with. That my question was there regarding the Prime Minister's announcement that the country is going to hear some good news in coming days regarding power tariffs, and that is not all. There was also an announcement that there are going to be reforms, especially regarding SOEs, I think, and perhaps divestment or any kind of privatization. So, where are we at regarding that?
I think the Minister of Energy is reiterated the stance that they're working on the IPPs, but we don't know the details yet. It's good to have some breathing space when it comes to electrical tariffs to people. But mind you, the short-term gaps are good, but they are not really sustainable. Now, I'm not really talking about
Hang
what
on, hang on.
Punjab is.
Sorry to cut you. Sorry to cut you. But when you talk about IPPs, are you referring to circular debt or are you talking about tariff rationalization?
Let me give you an example. You see, these IPPs have been there from, I think, Benazir's era, and they keep accumulating. So the circular debts were accumulating. These agreements were signed, uh, and there was no hindsight. So in progressive years, the government should have looked at the IPPs. They should have evaluated. Did they not see what was going to come given the higher inflation, for example, and the world markets fluctuation? That this was rather, this should have been taken into account when we have negotiated several IMF programs. So that is absolutely essential that we need to look at these IPPs and where we can have some kind of flexibility, because no matter how we look at this stabilization, it generally the effects on the poor people in Pakistan and in provinces should be positive. Uh,
I'm going
uh,
to go for
but
third
at the moment,
intervention with your permission, so I have to
How
actually,
can I refuse?
I have to request you to permit me. Sir, regarding the reform that you were talking about, once again, is it merely about installed capacity charges or is it about something else? Because I understand that with most of the IPPs, our mode of payment has already shifted from dollars to rupees. So that should at least take care of, ideally, certain aspects of it. Are we in a position to renegotiate capacity charges when it comes to IPPs? If not, pray tell me, how do we propose to change whatever is happening right now?
I'm not privy to these meetings, and I'm not a government representative here. I don't know whether this is also news for me whether we have switched from dollar to Pak rupees. I'm not sure about this.
It happened 6 years ago, sir.
We still have to pay the capacity charges. We still have a very high tariff. Generally, they will impact negatively on what we see, the effects of higher tariffs on the common man.
Right.
Sana.
If I could just go to Komal,
Yeah.
Faisal, with reference to what we've seen previously regarding the efforts that the government has made, one important one, of course, was with regards to tax collection. And I wanted your perspective in terms of adding retailers into the scheme. And we've also gotten reports which haven't been officially announced yet, but the FBR, in some reports, they have said that the FBR has also confirmed that this also now has been expanded to shops which are about 100 square foot and are also located in residential areas. I don't know how much that will help and whether or not we will be hearing an official announcement from this soon, but these are what the reports are saying. However, at the same time, we've seen that pretty much the way that we have taken this forward throughout the many years with different governments hasn't really been successful. What do you think about this front and what the government can do with this regard, and whether or not it's a good idea to bring into this tax net the small shops located in residential areas as well?
And Komal, with your permission, question number 2 from my side, and that is related to something Shehryar Sahab earlier talked about, and that is related to quite a lot of numbers of Pakistani fresh grads and people who were of course in the field of IT. They left the country and they are of course seeking further opportunities in the more stable economies of Western countries and the Middle Eastern countries. Can we say that in past, I mean, this is not the first time it has happened in Pakistan's history. Of course, it has happened in past as well, in through which of course Pakistan has gained a lot of momentum in terms of economy, because the people who actually go outside, they become part of their economies and they earn dollars and they send remittances to Pakistan, and that actually them remittances become part of Pakistan's economy. Can we expect that the people who have left, I mean hundreds of thousands of young grads, they left Pakistan who were of course IT specialists and are getting jobs in other countries because Pakistan was feeling a scarce when it comes to FDIs in the IT sector and different sectors related to it. So should we considering it a good omen that people have left, and in coming years we will be, I mean this sounds very cruel from my side, but at the same time, I mean it would be good for Pakistan's economy, wouldn't it?
In a short, yeah, nutshell kind of an answer, yes and no. But let me expand on this. So, answering question number one, let me just give you two keywords for both questions, question one and two. So, the first word is implementation. The second word is stability. And the third thing is it depends. The overall answer is it depends. So I think conceptually, theoretically, it's a good thing that we are trying to expand our tax base instead of charging the same people more tax. So increasing, let's say, the corporate tax rate, or we charge the super tax that came in. Everybody was really, nobody was really excited about that. So I think this is a good, like on a policy as a policy concept, it is good to increase the number of people who are paying taxes. It is also good to increase the diversity of groups that are paying taxes. But one thing we have to remember, that it has to be progressive taxation. So yes, if there are small shops in residential areas who are now becoming part of the tax net, I am not sure if they are actually becoming part of the tax net, because the classic problem that Pakistan always has faced is implementation. We are great at conceiving or conceptualizing or even copying policy from other places in the world. But when it comes to implementation, that is where we don't want to get our hands dirty and get down and get some work done. So firstly, my concern is whether it is actually happening. Second, my concern is great if it is happening, but we have to ensure that whatever policy for taxation that we bring in, it has to be progressive. So we are charging the rich or the bigger clients or the bigger revenue generators a larger percentage, or at least it's an equitable kind of taxation system. So this is just like a broader thing that I would like to say. And yes, of course,
that is great. But when you are actually measuring the worth of a shop by acreage, or for that matter square feet, does it become property tax or does it remain income tax?
So yes, this is a bit confusing, and this can be refined. But I think generally the direction to have a diverse set of uh, taxpayers is a good direction. But like I said, implementation, I think this is not the smartest thing to do, to be taxing people on acreage. But there are you can be researching this kind of thing. That's where all the technocrats come in. So I think maybe once we start this process, we learn on as we have these conversations and discourse, we start discussing and debating, and then maybe we can come up with something else. Of course we can come up with something else. But anyway, let me go back to the question number two about the brain drain, as we have witnessed in so many years in the past as well. And I have to say that I've also considered, and then kind of given up on that idea. But nonetheless, it is from an economic point of view, from an economist point of view, it is not an abnormal thing for labor to be mobile, for labor to move from one market to another in search of better price, better wage. So partly that's also a very normal behavior between economic actors. If they see that their skill set is valued more in another market, they can go. And given the population of young people in this country, I would not, I'm not saying this is not alarming, but nonetheless, we have seen in the past how remittances has supported Pakistan. So it is not necessarily a bad thing, but it does signal towards a trend, which we know it's this pretty much common sense. There's no rocket science about it. But this is in a direction that should alarm us a little bit, that okay, whoever is remaining, they need to also have meaningful work, they need to have decent employment. And what can we do if IT professionals are moving out, which actually in the world, these are the kind of this is the kind of skill set which is most mobile, because you don't need a lot of contextual nuances or expertise in a particular region. You can move your skill set from one place to another. So I wouldn't say this is totally alarming, but okay, if we are looking, if it is turning into brain drain, I would like to see the data. I don't have that right now, but I would like to see in what other categories is the brain drain happening. And if it is, maybe a lot of things that we think is the core for Pakistan. This is a core area for the kind of people that we need in Pakistan. Then, of course, this policy needs a rethink. And overall, I think it really depends on it really depends on the cost benefit analysis in terms of how much revenue we are getting and how much revenue we are losing. So there's no easy answer to that. So it depends.
Right. Shehryar Sahab, I also want your perspective with reference to what we've just discussed, is that the government, of course, is investing in these very important areas, especially when we talk about IT. And the Prime Minister has vocalized a lot of ways in which he's going to emphasize this. And there's also, of course, the big projects such as the IT park, in which the Prime Minister himself has said he expects a large number of revenue in terms of boosting our exports and, of course, bringing our professionals on board as well. But I want your perspective in terms of when we talk about such large scale projects, whether or not they are going to be substantially helping us with the current situation that we're in right now with the IMF, also with the economy, with the pressures of the prices of electricity and gas, and boosting our industry, and then bringing in more bilateral investments in the country as well. Is this something sustainable? Is this something that actually helps us in the long run? How is the government going to balance out these things?
It would be if we have the right kind of infrastructure, and if we have the right kind of regulations, and if we have the ease of doing business in Pakistan, it would be. And we also need to be mindful of the special economic zones. They have a lot of potential, but still we need to look at why a lot of these economic zones are still, need to nurture and need to attract a lot of investment. So if the cost of doing business is difficult in Pakistan, it will be very difficult for Pakistan to attract foreign investment. On the other hand, when we talk about these jobs, it is extremely difficult to inculcate a system of merit in Pakistan. A lot of jobs actually are based on patronage, are based on people they already know. There are people in the government or in the private sectors who would like to hire people they already have connections with. But at the same time, good people and highly intellectual people with the kind of salaries that we have in Pakistan would certainly move out from Pakistan. And you have to take into cognizance that there is a 40% now income tax on the people who would be working in this job sector. So just imagine that you have such a high percentage of taxation. And if I have the opportunity of going abroad, for example, to Dubai, then I would certainly move to Dubai for the time being, when there is more favorable business environment, working environment in Pakistan, then I would certainly return. But the young graduates and we have to look at a lot of young population are actually going to be the leaders of Pakistan. But if they are not confident in our economy and they don't have faith in our political process, what message are we sending to the rest of the countries?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Shehryar Khan Sahab, for joining us. And thank you, Ms. Komal Kenneth, for joining us and being a part of the discussion today. Farrukh, I'd like to come to you in terms of making us understand this whole discussion and also in terms of really making sure whether or not the country is progressing and moving towards a positive direction, because we hear one or two indicators that are good news and some others that don't seem like a very positive news as well. So when we take a look at the overall picture, where are we headed?
Right, Sana, thank you very much for the question. I think it is the most difficult situation right now for me to actually explain, because already two of our guests, honorable guests, have actually told us not to scandalize something that has already been reported. But my humble submission is that regardless of this board meeting and all, this is something that happened last time when we were renegotiating SBA as well.
Yeah.
Remember, that was a situation because on the 11th hour, it was the Prime Minister who saved it, right? And he had to actually show initiative, and through his initiative, these things were resolved. So I think that there will be some need for lobbying as well. In the end, the IMF board is essentially a political body. It is not essentially an economic body. When it comes to the staff level agreement, of course, that is already there, pending financing commitment.
Yeah.
And those commitments can come very, very soon if there was any kind of shortfall. So I don't think there is any serious need to panic. The schedule can be rescheduled, you can be added to the agenda item, or then you can find some kind of breathing space through other measures. And because of that, for example, if IMF deal has to take some time, then you also have these lifelines with the, say, World Bank, ADB, and other similar kind of bodies which are connected to the same body. So you have some kind of breathing space. And of course, then the countries, allies that have been very kind to supply the rollover, they are there also. I'm particularly interested in the Prime Minister's reform package that is going to be announced soon, because on one side, of course, we know that there is going to be some kind of pivot to solar energy, and there's going to be some kind of concessionary production and sale of the equipment needed for solar energy, and that will take some pressure off the grid. But excuse me, that is not the only thing. Then we have to look at the capacity payment issue as well, because that keeps on contributing hugely to our circular debt. So we have to find a way to tackle that issue as well. And then what happens to the SOEs? And remember, we used to hear about privatization or divestment in assets like PIA and then various power discos for that matter. So I'm really looking forward to the opportunity of hearing that there is some headway in that regard. Minus that, of course, our efforts to stabilize the economy will only be efforts. In the end, we have to go for a very surgical kind of, reform of the whole bureaucratic setup, economic and bureaucratic setup. That is a long-term goal. In the short term, SIFC and other measures should help. But the question right now is that when you talk about IMF, is the only question or issue regarding financing gap? Or is there a possibility that they are asking us to tax various places that we wanted to be the engine of growth? For example, these, CPEC related zones, right? Economic zones. If there is that kind of a situation, then there is a deadlock, and we hope that the government of Pakistan is able to find a solution. I hope we will find it. This Prime Minister has been very effective in negotiating not only with IMF but everywhere else as well.
Yeah.
Let's see what kind of solutions he proposes in coming days.
Absolutely. We're now going to be moving our discussion to our next segment that takes a look at what is going on in the UK and, of course, the linkages that have been drawn with reference to a website and a person located in Lahore that has been arrested. And so we're going to be taking a look at what this means in terms of this evolving case and also in terms of the fight against fake news globally and, of course, Pakistan's role in this regard. And Faisal, I'm going to come to you with reference to that. Of course, Mr. Farhan Asif is the main suspect that has been arrested. And, of course, Channel 3 Now is a website that is being talked about. There have been a lot of discussions online about whether or not he can even be called a journalist, because many in the journalist community, particularly in Lahore or Punjab, are claiming that they've not heard of the guy. And then there's, of course, also the fact that the website in itself seems to be very localized and very small scale and very sensationalized in terms of its posts. There are others who are claiming that the origin is not coming in from Lahore, it's actually coming in from UK. Whether or not that's actually linked with Channel 3 Now, there's also claims with that. And then, of course, other websites from which the original post was copied is another claim. There's a lot, of course, that needs to be unearthed and investigated. But in terms of the reports that have come out so far, and of course, your experience and the community that we're in, of course, what is your analysis of the current situation?
Yes, and it's a a very strange situation right now. I mean, right after this ITV story I went through, I actually contacted my immediate friends who are journalists, well-settled journalists within Lahore. I asked them about this guy as well, and they had no idea about who this guy was. He was someone who was just working from home, as everybody is doing nowadays. I mean, most of the people, they're working from home, and he's working from home as well. And he's someone who's been running this nexus. And he, while in this ITV report, when he was questioned about who wrote this, and he said, I didn't write it, my staff written it. And my staff was obviously immediately sacked after that. To me, I think it's only him who was working and nobody else was working. The only workers he had was actually ChatGPT, because ChatGPT is a place from where you can write anything. I mean, articles or any news, you just give bit of information to that, and
what about
it.
the claims that are about 30 odd people located in Pakistan, India and the UK? There are reports coming in about that.
Yeah, the problem is, as soon as this Channel 3 Now put this story on, I mean, quickly from India, from the Western countries, they started copying it, and they started labeling this guy to be the source. Channel 3 News is the source of their news.
No, I'm talking about the people working for Channel 3 Now. Are you saying it's a website run by a single guy?
It is the single guy who's running it, and he has the pseudo names of the people who are actually, and the initial investigation is actually giving this kind of outlook of this.
Sana, what Faisal is
now
saying, that the staff he is referring to is wooden staff.
It's no existence at all. I mean, nobody exists. This guy purely worked on the greed of what? Greed of clicks. He just wanted clicks on his website so that he can generate more and more money out of it. And this wasn't the first time he did it. Previously, I mean, Fox News, they had reservations about one of the websites, and it was called Fox 3 Now. Fox 3 Now actually belonged to the very guy, and they actually sent this guy a notice, and that's when he shut that website previously. And now this time around he did this. And this guy, normally he just simply gets gets an idea from the social media. If somebody from some area is providing with some kind of information related to anything happened around him, this guy simply would create a story, and he would paste it in his website, and that's how he's been going on. And this time around, I mean, he just created a name, Ali Al-Shakati. This guy does not exist at all. And now when we are seeing that ITV is following this guy, I would have rather liked it more if British authorities, they would have figured out, busted the fake news there and then, so that this kind of propaganda wouldn't have created the whole fuss in Britain.
What about the BBC? What about the
caused.
BBC report also that has been coming out that claims that there is not substantial evidence linking this guy to the violence or the social media posts?
I mean, but if we look at the ITV itself, in the ITV report, this guy is actually on the door while he's standing at the door. He's just saying that, my staff did it. And the staff, where is the staff? Staff has been sacked. This is what he's, claiming, that his staff has been sacked.
But,
now, I think
but-
the further
But
investigation.
Raja Sahab, you are not noticing Sana has you pinned down.
No, not pinned down. In this case, of course, further investigation would come up with the no names at all, and the chat GPT was used, and this only Farhan Asif was behind the whole nexus, because he was using
Okay.
chat GPT and creating all
Well,
of the
there's a-
articles and
Right.
all. No staff at all.
There is a lot that, of course, is still under investigation. We'll be, of course, hearing more. But I also want your take, Farrukh, on this situation as well. And then in terms of if we do establish any such instance where there is an individual who does these things for clicks and baits and gets financial advantage for them.
Clickbaits, basically.
Yes. So with reference to this causality or correlation that perhaps has been established with that post to the violence or riots existing in the UK, how exactly does that happen, and whether or not whether there was malintent involved is going to factor in terms of what are the consequences of this fake news. I mean, surely we can expect an individual to understand what it can possibly lead to, but how do we establish that accountability if there is or if there isn't malintent involved?
That is a good question, Sana. And first of all, let me protest what Faisal has been insinuating repeatedly, that somehow ChatGPT is responsible. ChatGPT is just an AI. You can ask it to rephrase something that you actually input through your prompts, or you can ask it to create fiction. If there was a fiction that was created, there would be some kind of signs in the language. I pointed out earlier, in a couple of weeks ago also, a couple of stories where it was clear that it is generated, although they were carried by mainstream newspapers. So that also happens. But apart from that, usually it is what you are doing yourself, right? Of course, ChatGPT or any other AI, may it be Meta's AI or any other, they can rephrase and improve the grammar, but nothing else. Now, let me also remind you that last time there was a term that we used, and when we were debating it, it was, I think, called digital terrorism. And there was a rebuttal that I mentioned the next day. And if I correctly remember, it was from a British source called BBC, I think, that claimed that, there is no such thing as digital terrorism because it is freedom of expression. You have seen a practical example of disinformation leading to harassment of human beings and violence on the streets, right? This is, I'm sorry, I don't want to rub it in, but this is a qualified example of weapon grade disinformation. This is the first thing. The second thing is that the whole thing sounds surreal, because on one side there's the stabbing incident, very sad, and somebody who has been a semi-celebrity did it, right? When he was a young kid, he was a celebrity, and then he did it. And after that, everything was hidden, and all of a sudden there are reports like these, and then immediately there's a reaction as if people were waiting. So it all seems orchestrated. And then I was thinking about something else. There was recently another arrest, and that was in the US, regarding some kind of plot to assassinate Trump or somebody else. And that, again, a Pakistani with links to Iran. So my concern is that when you are talking about this country, you know that there are enemies of this country that are active, and they recruit Pakistanis also. It reminded me of something else. It was a kind of fake website, right? Can you not remember any example of disinformation campaign coming from India associated with international names that report about disinformation lab? If there is similar kind of process, is it possible that there are elements who want Pakistan to be implicated in all this? And of course, Pakistan has this huge disaffected young population that can be recruited by anybody outside.
Yeah.
So the concern right now is who benefited from violence on the streets in UK? Was it Pakistan? Because Pakistani population was the target, right? Pakistani, British were the targets of that violence that was there. So who else would be there?
Right.
So these are the questions that keep on coming to my mind. And the problem is because, admirably, we keep on focusing on the micro dots, we forget the bigger picture.
Absolutely. Thank you, Farrukh, and thank you, Faisal, for joining us in the debate. Of course, we'll be talking more about this and other news as the story develops. That's all that we have from the show today. We'll now see you tomorrow.